former tech lead of the church, John Hazel. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you back, man. It seems like a lot going on in your life.
Yeah, definitely. My wife just got her, she's a counselor, and she just got her licensure in the state of Texas. So that's a pretty big deal, pretty big step in for a counselor. So we're excited. And then my daughter just switched daycares, which may not sound like a big deal, but it's a pretty big deal for a 2-year-old. And I'm real excited about the preschool she's at. And I am shifting out of the church. So I'm part-time at one community church for the next week and a half about. So it's been like a 5-week transition, trying to just have the smoothest and healthiest transition possible. So I am kind of helping with the interview process, even with bringing somebody new on, and have been part-time for a couple of weeks to help with that. And I'm transitioning full-time into my business, doing websites, marketing, and organizational consulting. And that's really my heartbeat, is that last part of it, the consulting, because I love just helping people to be more efficient and to have healthier cultures on their teams. And so that is kind of what I weave into everything I do. But my skill sets and my expertise is deeply in the web space. I've been doing WordPress websites for about a dozen years, and I've been doing websites for about double that. And so so I'm doing a lot of websites. I'm getting into more complex web applications, more than just informational websites, but on the technical, it's PHP, Laravel web applications is really what I'm diving deep into now. So yeah, man.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the consulting aspect? Like, what kind of consulting are you doing, and what is it that you love about consulting?
Yeah. And excuse me, I didn't get to eat lunch, so I'm eating my lunch while I'm talking. But
No,
yeah, for me, it ranges. It's a lot of things. I mean, the best thing would just be for me to actually show you the tool that I use to onboard people onto the digital team at the church. This is something that I designed. I brought together a whole bunch of different things, and it's something that'll continue because it's my heartbeat. So let me just share my screen here. There you go. So when people join the digital experience, I'd share the church culture, and then I'd share the vision of the digital experience, and then I would show this, and we talk through what is your passion, what is the motivation, the thing that you have a strong emotion about, right? So for me, this passion might manifest itself as a particular area. Like right now, it's Laravel. Right now, I'm passionate about Laravel or Laravel. I think it's Laravel, but pronunciation in the tech space. We're all like reading each other's stuff online, and so we make up in our head what the pronunciation is, and no one really knows. So for me right now, it might be Laravel, but it's not really Laravel's not really the passion. The real passion is curiosity, and right now Laravel is tickling that curiosity, and that's why, right? So a lot of times, like, we got to find the passion beneath the passion for people. And then I want to know, ultimately, we all are trying to know, why do I exist? What's the reason for which I exist? What's the mission that I'm supposed to be on? What's my purpose? And so I want to help people align at the intersection of their passion and their purpose. And their purpose, this is a more elusive thing, because this is something that we're continuing to develop throughout our lives and discover. But there is a reason that we've been placed on this earth, and we want to find the closest thing we can to that. And so for me right now, I know, like, things that the themes, I reflect back on my life and I see different themes. And so one of the themes I see is legacy, is that I have been without going too deep into my story, I've had a lot of loss in my life, and both of my parents are deceased. And so legacy is huge for me because I want, what legacy am I leaving for my daughter? What legacy am I establishing for her and for the generations in the future? So for me, I know that legacy is tied to that purpose. I know that my purpose deals in being able to pattern things out from where we're at to where we're headed and helping to project and move us into the future. So I continue to like try to be a visionary and try to invent and help us move towards the future. And then third is our power. What am I mighty at? What are my strengths? What are the great and impressive strength that, so these are like actual definitions, the subtext there. So great and impressive strength to act in a particular way. So what are my strengths? For me, it's invention. It's being able to like solve problems by discovering patterns and being able to pattern those out and build trajectories, and inventing, when we have a vision or we have a problem, inventing a solution to that. Like my mind just never stops inventing. I mean, seriously, sometimes it's annoying. It's like there's no reason to invent that. Like I'm like a month ago, I was mentally reinventing my schedule, my work schedule for the church, when it was like I'm literally transitioning to part-time and transitioning out, and yet my mind is still trying to like optimize and find the ideal thing. And so that's where the organizational consulting, you can see it gets into this psychology aspect of helping people unlock their true potential, and it also gets into this efficiency aspect of helping people optimize, right? So let me just pause there before I move on. Do you have any thoughts or questions on that?
Yeah. So yeah, I know a lot of times when people think of consulting business, they're more focused on just like the technical aspects, the technologies, etc. What do you feel is like the importance of this, like the more psychological aspect of it? And what value does this really bring, have you found?
Well, I mean, we live in a, well, let me put it this way. The 20th century was marked by this industrial age where it's all about productivity.
Mm-hmm.
But the turn of the 20th century brought us this information age where all of a sudden we have access to all this information. We've got machines doing a lot of productivity, physical manual labor productivity for us. And we're in this age of knowledge. The challenge is we have access to all this information, all this knowledge, but being able to get context and being able to dig in and find the right thing that you need has been the most challenging thing. So let's talk about something a little bit controversial. AI, ChatGPT, right? So with AI, when you ask it a question, and for the record, like at its core, AI is advanced statistics that are happening. Like there's just like highly advanced and layered statistics that's happening here, right? And so when you ask a question and it gives you this definitive sounding answer, because the tone that it communicates in with these large language models can, like by default, is very confident, overconfident. And so it makes you think like, well, that's the answer. So if you ask things about like the worst way you can use AI, or one of the worst ways you can use AI, is to be a fact checker, because it's not good at that. It hallucinates, it lies basically, and unintentionally, but and so you don't want to use it for facts. You want to use it for creative inspiration. You want to use it for helping you generate code for coders. Like I use several different tools. I use ChatGPT. I use Find, PHIND. I use obviously GitHub Copilot. It was like the original for developers, and it's hugely helpful for me. And I'll even kind of verbally process things with ChatGPT, where I'll be like, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I get there? And it'll help me develop that code. But anyway, the point is that the reason that ChatGPT took off the way that it did is because people want that conversational interface, and people don't want to do a ton of cognitive load of what it takes to do the research that, and we're used to doing this. Like, we're used to Googling something and going to a couple of different results and cross-checking things. And now sometimes we go to the first result and we just take it as fact, when even though we know, there's a good chance that that's not fact, and like we need to cross-check our references and stuff. But for some reason, when we're hearing it definitively from an AI, we automatically assume that it's speaking the truth, when it's definitely not. But it's the subconscious effect. Like, I fall prey to it myself, and I have to remind myself like what's going on here. So that's a whole, we could talk for an entire 2 hours on AI and stuff. So I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. But what I want to say is that one of the reasons I think we crave that is because there's so much information. We're like, hey, pare it down to the information I need to know. And that's something that AI can do a really good job at if we're using it the right way, and not as a fact checker. And so all that to say that in the era we're in, to answer your question, you said, why is the psychology aspect so important to this, right? So the era we're in, the currency is data, is knowledge, is it's not even knowledge. I would say knowledge comes cheap now, right? So data is currency, but contextualization of data is the strongest currency, probably, because being able to take that and extract and extrapolate things that are actual useful information is a whole nother task than just collecting the data. And so knowing where, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. So let me like bring it all the way back in and just say that in the era we're in, it's not enough to be an employer that is paying well, that has good benefits, that all these different like standards that we're accustomed to. We've got to also be helping people find fulfillment. We've got to be helping people to operate in this place at the intersection of their passion, their purpose, and their power. Because frankly, millennials and especially Gen Z they crave authenticity more than anything. And after Gen Z, we've got Gen Alpha coming up, and they're going to really crave authenticity. And so being able to be your authentic self and being able to know, like, I'm in my flow state, I'm doing the things that give me energy, and I'm making a major contribution, like that's what we crave. And that's a different craving than boomers had, and a different craving than Gen X. And so, it's just, that's the era we're in. That's why it's important.
Absolutely. Just to paint the picture. So one community church, that's like one of the biggest church networks in DFW, possibly the nation. Can you kind of describe like where the church was, in terms of web presence before you got there, and how you utilize your framework and the things you've been developing to take it where it is now?
Yeah. So I use this, and the next thing I'm going to show you to develop a team, because when I started out, I basically started out with one team member, and we're a volunteer-driven culture. So I was the only person on staff for digital, and there's this large website and app that is supporting dozens of different ministries that all need to get their communications out. And I needed to get my work done through volunteers. And so, when you have paid employees, like, there's a level of expectation there because they're paid. Like, they're, at the end of the day, like, I'm paying you, so you got to get this done. And even if that doesn't have to be explicitly stated, it's known, it's subconscious and it's in there. And so, but with volunteers, like, if the thing is frustrating to them, if it's requiring, now people have a tolerance for hard work, and people want to work hard for a church, but what they don't have a tolerance for is lack of clarity, lack of vision, lack of alignment, feeling like they're misaligned and they're a misfit, right? So I had to make sure that people are aligned and fitting very well. I had to make sure that they were on mission, headed towards this compelling vision, and I had to make sure they're doing something that they're enjoying. You know, they can't, if they're just miserable all the time, then they're not going to want to stick to it. So this is my framework for engaging that team. And that team is now, so I went from, like I said, I had one person at the beginning to when I had my exit call, we had a Zoom call where we called all the digital experience, as many people as we could get on there. We had like 36 plus people on that call. And that's not even everybody that was on the team, because there's people that couldn't make the call. So, 40 to 50 people on that team from one, I think was a pretty excellent transition to make.
Yeah, I know a lot of people out there, they might be looking to try to get volunteers or, people who don't have to pay a whole bunch because, as a startup or something. So how did you go about like going from 1 to 40 people? How did you, grow the volunteer network?
Okay. So let's see. All right, I'm going to skip over this and jump to this. This is how I did it. Every Sunday, I honored something called, and I'm going to go ahead and jump to the advanced. Well, we'll start here and then I'll jump to the advanced. But basically, people start out as strangers, people that I just would walk up to on a Sunday morning and say, "Hey, how long you been coming here?" And if they said 2 months, then my next response is going to be different than if they said 2 years. If they say 2 years, I'm like, "Oh, awesome. Where are you plugged in?" And if they say, "Well, nowhere yet. We actually were just thinking we're ready to become members, or we need to get starting to serve somewhere, or we used to serve, but it's been a while." I'm immediately trying to get them plugged into where they want to, where they're going to serve the best, where they're going to really thrive, because I want them aligned in that passion, purpose, and power, right? And then, so they then become prospects when I'm like, "Hey, I'm on staff here and I'm passionate about making sure no one walks alone. And I just want to help you do that. Are you up for that? Are you opposed to that?" If they say, "I'm up for it," or "Yeah." Then I say, "Well, can I just grab your phone number?" And then we'll follow up. And here's the next time we can connect. Right. So then most of the time, because I'd be prayerful about it, and I'd be like, "God, who do you want me to connect with?" Most of the time, they would end up already being in the tech space, and it'd be somebody I could invite to my weekly digital experience calls, right? So then they become prospects who I'm following up with to get to a call. Then they then show up to a meeting. At that point, they're in orbit. Now, there's a couple keys here, which is a weekly meeting. I had points of touch points where I could plug people into, and then two, this relentless follow-up of texting people and being like, "Hey man, it was so great to meet you on Sunday. I'm really excited to connect again. Are you free tonight for my digital experience meeting? It's just on Zoom. It's at 6:30. Would you be up for that?" And if they say yes, send in the Zoom link. And now that they're in orbit, now what are we going to do with them? Because we still got to attach. And so next I would actually walk them through this exact thing. And I would say, "Hey, this is where you're at now. You are here. You're in orbit. If this is something you're excited about, then you can move into onboarding. Otherwise, I want to find the right place to plug you into. And so is there another area of ministry that we can plug, where you think it'll be a better fit? Or is it just a life group? You just need people to do life with, right?" And so then we move into onboarding. And then once they go through the onboarding phase, then they're active. And then through continuous development, people become leaders. But we're always circling inside of this passion, purpose, and power, and trying to get more and more fulfilled living, because that's where our healthy, successful, momentous, where people, teams, and organization experience that momentum, right? And so yeah, that's the overview. But I'm going to skip down to the deep dive. So here's the deep dive that shows this. So like I said, prayerful engagement with strangers and honoring Prime Connection Hour, which would be on Sunday mornings in between our 8 and 10 service and our 10 and 12 service, because that's when there's just tons of people and there's lots of people waiting in lines. There's people just waiting. If people are waiting for their spouse in the bathroom, they're waiting in line. Like, I get to do a couple things. I get to occupy their time for a minute so they're not bored of waiting. And I get to, help them plug into something more exciting. And I just get to make a new friend. So I would connect with people. And sometimes that's all it would be, is we just, they've got somebody they can text now if they need something. And through faith and relentless pursuit and a strong engagement process. So I've got all kinds of tips and tricks on like the specifics. There's lots of different tools, frameworks. Break it down to the most simple form. I just have contact groups on my phone, and I would have a contact group for prospects, for Orbit, for onboarding, and for active and for leaders. And I would go through weekly my prospects group and text them and invite them to whatever was appropriate, or I would just check in on them and see how they're doing. Strong engagement process. And then for people moving into Orbit, having those intentional meetings to get people into Orbit and into onboarding, and those faithful follow-up in the rhythms. And then onboarding, we need a call to action and we need role clarity for them to successfully move through onboarding. And then through continuous feedback, through sacred one-on-one meetings with core leaders. So I would have my core leadership team. I'd have a monthly one-on-one meeting with my core leadership team. And then I needed them to have monthly one-on-one meetings with their team, so that we're making sure that everybody's getting one-on-one care and development. That's how people get developed, and then they move into leadership. Now, people can fall off of the flywheel at any point. So they could just be not interested in the first place. They could be not ready to commit yet, or they could already be active, but then go inactive because of life circumstances, or it's just no longer the season. In any of those cases, I move them into another group called the 6-month follow-up. It's like they don't just disappear off the face of the earth. It's like these are people that I do want to reach out to at some point and see how they're doing, right? On a personal scale, I did that literally just through the Contacts app on my phone. You can do it with stuff just on the phone. On a large scale, organization scale, I do it in HubSpot. So that's how I do that. And then just to back it up a little bit, I use the Working Genius as my model to help people align into their passion. So I would, with this comes from Patrick Lencioni and the Table Group Company. So there's 3 phases of work, basically. There's ideation, which is this wonder and invention. Then there's activation, discernment and galvanizing. And then there's implementation, enablement and tenacity. And so wonder is all about seeing the opportunities, seeing the possibilities, right? Seeing vision for where we could go, or just wondering about, like, why is this way? And like, couldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be better if? And then invention is inventing that solution to get us there. So, okay, I see this vision. I'm going to invent the solution to get us there, validating, confirming the importance of the need, generate that idea. And then we move into activation. So you have discernment, which is assessing the merit and workability. It's intuitively being able to identify what will and won't work, and basically volleying back and forth with the inventor until we get things in a good place to move forward with. And then there's galvanizing, rallying people to action, just generating enthusiasm and action around that idea, and being able to follow up and re-galvanize people. So now that we've got the solution activated, we then implement. And this is the thing, is that a lot of these stages get skipped. Sometimes things get invented before they've really been wondered if this really is a problem that should be solved. That's where the trap I fall into, because my genius is invention, and then my second genius is wonder. So a lot of times I'll skip it and I'll have to back up and be like, am I inventing something worth inventing? And then it's got to be discerned. It's like, okay, is this really the best way to go about this? Otherwise, we end up wasting a lot of time. And then we got to rally people to action. Otherwise, we end up throwing a little bit of effort to it, but not enough effort, not staying focused. Galvanizers help us stay focused on the end goal. And then enablement is initiating that support, assisting the implementation. Enablement is like, hey, give me the tasks, let me execute. How can I support, right? Tenacity is, in contrast to enablement, is not so much about the supporting as it is about, let's bring this thing to completion. Let's execute. Let's tie up the loose ends. I want to see the win. I want to see that finish line. And so tenacity commits to ensuring that that idea gets completed and desired results are achieved. So for me, my geniuses are invention and wonder. My frustrations are galvanizing and tenacity. So when it comes to, and both of those are the follow through frustrations. So I had to surround myself with people who are going to help rally me and others to action for the vision that I generated from my invention and wonder. And I have to surround myself with people like you, Kevin, who have the genius of tenacity, who can be like, okay, let's circle back to this thing that you already invented and let's execute this thing and check that box off, right? So those are the 6 types of working genius. Patrick Lencioni Table Group. That's been really, really huge in this whole process of aligning people where they're going to be fulfilled, as well as aligning my team where it can be cohesive and effective.
Absolutely. So the ultimate purpose of this is pretty much like bringing in the right people where everybody complements each other and they're fulfilled so that they stick around for the long-term vision.
That's it.
Absolutely. Okay. So like, can you paint some of the wins that you've gotten from implementing this framework at church?
Yeah. I would show you, but I don't want to expose everybody's private information, but I have a dashboard where I can see all the people I've got with the different geniuses. Here's all my wonder people. Here's all my invention people, discernment, galvanize. So when I face a problem, I'd actually like pull somebody in on it. So honestly, one of the biggest patterns that I picked up on was that anybody who has the genius of tenacity tends to be really good at working with task management software. Really, so you are one of those people, Kevin, where if I like have the task in there, if the task is clear, I've got clarity, I've got all the resources that you need to execute that task, it's all in there in Asana, and I assign it to you, I don't have to worry about it. I know you're going to execute on it. And so I've seen time after time, task after task, project after project. Another example, I've got a great team member who oversees QR codes, which falls under the digital analytics piece of our web team. And so QR codes, it sounds like such a simple thing. You're like, is that really so complicated? But when you're generating like dozens of QR codes a month and you're trying to lead people to the right places, and it's intricately tied with where you're leading them to on the website. And then on top of that, you're trying to track analytics, because I want to know how many people scan this QR code off of a mailer that landed in their mailbox versus how many off of a flyer that was physical, or a outreach card, an invite card that was physically handed to them. And how many people, a flyer when they walked in the door at church versus how many people scanned it on the screen, because those are all totally different metrics that tell different stories. How many people are we reaching outside of the church building? How many people are we reaching inside of the church building? And then with the screens, that's showing up online, on YouTube, all those places, as well as in person on the screen. So how many people are we reaching through those screens that we're putting out? We're putting all this work into QR codes. Like, we want to make sure they're effective, and we want to know how many are we reaching. And so what I found was, because she had the genius of tenacity, when I set up a process, a simple process and a simple system to be paired with that process. The process is people fill out a QR code request form that then goes into a queue, and then that person is responsible for that queue. Okay, that's the process. The system I set up was an Asana form that people fill out that goes into Asana, my chosen project management tool, into a project. And I have that person on my team as the project owner for that. So they automatically get assigned to that task. And when I did that for someone who had the genius of tenacity, those things just get done every time, like fast, like within, like the guarantee is within 72 hours, but most of the time it'd be done in 12 hours because it'd just be like, she gets the email, she executes, right? So when you get this and you understand this, like it's really a game changer. Another one I had is I would have challenges with getting a checklist done on Sundays. And I had a team member who I just started to discover that he was a galvanizer. And then he took the Working Genius and confirmed it. But I discovered that like he would, where we would get distracted on all these other tasks, he would rally us back to action on the main thing. What's the main thing we got to get done for today? And so I set him up as the leader on during, while he's there on the weekends, so that he'd rally us to action. So there's a couple examples for you.
Yeah, sounds good, man. So like I said, think about like maybe in terms of a startup or small business, they want to get people on their staff. Like, how do they get those people? I know you kind of mentioned like just reaching out and talking to people, and then what does the actual onboarding process look like to make them effective?
Yeah,
and keep them sticking.
So thus far, I've been talking in the context of church, of ministry, talking about volunteers. But this is equally as applicable in the workplace, in the corporate workplace. So the key is, one is like this should be a part of your interviewing process. Not necessarily that you're having people go out and take the Working Genius test, but that you're thinking about, okay, for this position, do I need this person to really do a lot of galvanizing, really a lot of rallying people to action? And if that's the case, am I willing to have somebody in this position that has all of the technical competency, but clearly galvanizing is a frustration for them and it's going to drain them? Because that does a disservice to us as the organization and to them, because they're not going to be fulfilled. Now, they could have galvanizing as a competency and they may be fulfilled by the other elements of their job, and that's okay. But if the job requires a lot of galvanizing, do I really want to put somebody that has that as a frustration, right? So that's the application in the interviewing process. Now, you don't ask, like I said, you don't have to ask them to take the assessment. This is so simple that you just ask questions like, how do you do when you've got a team member, that's a coworker and you're kind of reliant on them to execute? Like, what do you do in that scenario if they're kind of holding up the process? Maybe you don't want to be a jerk about it, but you're trying to figure out what do you do in that scenario, right? You ask a question like that, you're going to be able to gauge, are they a strong galvanizer? Or are they going to have a lot of resistance to that? Is that like a really difficult thing for them? If you need an inventor, if you've got a position that's very innovative, maybe you're asking like, okay, if this vision gets laid out in front of you, what's your thought process? And you'll find out quickly if that person's an inventor genius or not, right? So everybody's got two geniuses, two competencies, two frustrations. Everybody's got value to add, but it's about getting the right fits in the right place. Now I've forgotten your original question. Did I answer it?
I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but
I think
okay. So
I think the other piece about it, so that has to do with like interviewing talent, but as far as finding the right talent, if we go back to the growth, the flywheel of growth here, this works on several different layers. This is exterior and interior. So this works on the layer of acquiring new clients, because I pulled this straight from HubSpot and I modified it to fit my needs. But I pulled HubSpot's growth or their sales flywheel, which is, comes from a sales funnel orientation. And I modified it. So basically, for people on the outside, your clients, your customers that you're trying to acquire, they want the same thing. They want to work with somebody where they feel like they're in a flow state, where you're both in passion, purpose, and power organizationally as individuals. And you can easily apply this to them as well. And that just gets into lead generation and cold calling and all kinds of stuff that we could talk about sales wise and marketing, but also internally. The way to acquire candidates for your business is not just there's multiple ways. Like one is, yes, it's hiring employees, and yes, it's job postings on Indeed and everything else, but it's also getting out to networking events and meeting people and cold prospecting people at networking events to see, might this be somebody that could work for me, right? You can go to conventions, you can go to conferences, you can go to meetups. Like it's so much more accessible in our era now. It's wild. So you can do that as a business owner, and maybe it's not that you're looking for employees, maybe you're looking for subcontractors, or maybe you're looking for people that you can kind of be affiliated with and associated with and say, hey, this is somebody who, like, I recommend business to them and they refer business back to me as well. This flywheel concept applies to all of those different scenarios. You may have to get a little bit creative, but it applies to all of them. What you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds good, man. So we got like a lot of, they call them solopreneurs, like solo entrepreneurs. Do you feel like this process can also help them? Like it's just them that's working for their quote unquote business.
Yeah. Well, one, don't underestimate the value that you add to people. So as a solopreneur, I'd encourage you to develop an internship where you've got one or two people that you are pouring into, and it can be a free internship or a low paid internship or whatever is going to make sense for you. But don't underestimate that. Now, if you're a solopreneur and that's what you want, like you want to stay that way and that's what you want, that's cool. I would still say that we all have a responsibility to pour out, to develop people. And so I would say find what that looks like for you. Maybe it's posting on LinkedIn. Maybe it's posting on your platform of choice. Maybe it's, training somebody around you. Maybe it's finding a high school kid that is headed in the same direction and teaching them. Find where you're supposed to pour out, because if you sow that stuff in, you will reap. Like there's just this principle of sowing and reaping. Like what you put out into the world, you're going to get back on some level. And so you need to be pouring out into people. But this applies again, like all those different levels, whether it's building your sales funnel, whether it's finding the people that you need to subcontract or work with, all of that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yep. So I know you got to head out soon, man. Did you have like any closing thoughts to leave to the audience?
Let me scroll through here real quick and see what else I might want to talk about. There's so much. I mean, we could talk for days about this stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different models here: leadership style, 5 dysfunctions of a team, the 5 foundations of people development from leader, self-leadership, all kinds of different things. So we've got lots of content for future episodes, but this is all the different kind of organizational consulting content that I go through. Horizons of Focus is a great one. When clarity is lacking, you got to know where to look. And this gets to all the different levels of action, right? Communication. I love the StoryBrand framework from Donald Miller down in Nashville, Tennessee. Huge fan of this framework. So there's lots of different things, and these are the kinds of things that you can work with me on. And I've just been grateful to for your friendship, Kevin, and the way like we spur each other on, all the ways that you encourage me with consulting, with web, with all of it. But bottom line is get started somewhere, have confidence, have boldness, and work towards knowing your passion, your purpose, and your power, and helping others to know. And there's no better way to learn your own than by helping others find theirs. That's what I've found these last couple of years.
Yeah, great closing, man. Appreciate you for coming on. We gotta keep going with the podcast.
Let's do it.
All right. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.
All right.